a 2017 Brother Thomas Fellowship from the Boston Foundation, for example. There's a description here of what you do with your programs. I'm not going to read that. You can kind of maybe prep that yourself or say something about it. I think the paragraph in your programs, I'll just go over that. I mean, it's helpful to hear some more information about Regie. People who haven't met him or are unfamiliar with his background. Regie is an award-winning poet, songwriter, author, workshop facilitator, and educator. Regie Gibson has performed, taught, and lectured at schools, universities, theaters, and various other venues on 2 continents and 7 countries, including Havana, Cuba. Regie has worked with many artists like poets Gwendolyn Brooks and Sterling Plump, musician Roy Ayers, and dancer Savion Glover. Please welcome Regie to our podium today.
So is this a little better?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
That's good.
Okay, great. A little closer. All right. Sure. I want to say good morning.
Good morning.
And those who I might not have spoken to already, it's always good to have another day of breath to try to create the kind of world that you'd like to see, right? And I think sometimes we lose track of that, and I'm very glad to be asked to be here this morning to present what I title as Letter and Spirit, the rants, chants, and coos of a literary musician. Now maybe that needs a bit of unpacking for some people, for others maybe not. But for me, it's over the years something that I think I've come up with as a way to describe, I guess, my more artistic, poetic, activist way of moving through the world. Rant, because it is about the expression of our outrage and anger at being hurt by a world that is often so many times at odds with our ethics and our morals. Chants, because we have this need to call to that spiritual part of us, that part of us that so often, so very often, is beyond our very explanation. And coos, words and sounds meant to help us heal from those outrages that we rant about. And those things that often help us or make us lose sight of that more spiritual part of us, the part of us which is more than just meat, that part of us which cannot necessarily be quantified as a qualifiable thing. Because I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I get so caught up in fighting the darkness that I forget about the light. Right? So busy thinking about the revolution that I don't take time to think about the evolution. Right? And I guess this is where we human beings, when we get the necessity of reaching out toward each other. We find it through word, through poetry, through song, through dance, through these things that bind us together in community. So let's try a little something. Now, where I come from in Chicago, when somebody could sing, and they sang so well that it got into the molecules of your body, we would say that individual could sing. And also, when we talk about something that a person has that is beyond what we can quantify, we don't say that person has a thing about it. We say that individual has a thing about them. So what I want us to do now is I want you guys to chat back with me about that thing. This is how the chant goes. We're going to try it, right? It goes up. That thing, that thing, that thing, thing, thing. Be thankful for that thing. Let's try it, y'all ready? Those of us here who has felt it know it's the sweetest feeling felt. I'm talking that gentle touch of spirit that makes all defenses melt. It evades each attempt at language, though it speaks through everyone. And at times when we are silent, we can hear it hum. Now we know it's the reason that we all fall in love. It's why particles come in pairs. It's the yin and the yang of molecules. It's why E equals MC squared. It's the reason we need poetry, cause some phenomena cannot be named. And I don't care what y'all call what began it all. Let's just be thankful for that thing. We're talking that thing, that thing, that thing, thing. Be thankful, thankful for that thing. Now, I'm not telling nobody here nothing that you all don't already know. And that is, every one of us is connected from the macro to the micro. Don't believe your deceiving eyes. Look deep inside and you'll know it's true, that there's a universal union between the universe and you. Now some find it in religion, some in their sacred books of old, some in the arts and the sciences, and some peering through a telescope. But it's the mother of all mysteries, from DNA to the Big Bang. And I don't care what it is that began all this. Let's just be thankful for that thing, that thing, that thing, that thing, thing. Be thankful, thankful for that thing. I'm talking that thing, that thing, that thing, thing, thing. Be thankful. We're talking prime causation, quantum fluctuation, cosmic inflation, particle creation, protons and neutrons colliding in deuterium, then into hydrogen, then into helium. Next came the light out of a plasmic darkness. Then came the time that the stars started sparking in nucleosynthesis. First stars exploding, then another generation of stars begin their genesis. Dust balls forming, planets borning, Earth is then birthed, and then life begins dawning. Prokaryote, cyanobacteria to eukaryote, then multicellular life begins to settle in. Fish to amphibian, reptilian, mammalian, primate, then great ape, and then Homo sapien. Whatever it is that began those things I named. We are the last hominid standing on a planet demanding that we evolve past our nomadic hunting axis to planting and creating civilizations, that we be driven by an uncanny desire to lift this species higher. And civilization has always began around those who can bring and maintain the fire. Begins in the constant crackle of consumed and consummated elements, begins in the sparkle hum of the human, from which the elder's voice rises in song, into a singing that unites us, invites us to gather around the flame, which is part of the greater flame, of which we cannot name. That thing, that thing, that thing, thing, thing. Let's be thankful, thankful for that thing. And there is something in each one of us constantly whispering, unmanacle the mind, unshackle the heart. There is something in us that sparks and calls us like children and says, listen, you beautiful small things which are part of the bigness of all things. Listen, you beings of instinct, seeking community of feeling, you must make a mythology that makes of you a meaning. Know that to be born is a miracle. Know that each human life is different, unique, and unrepeatable. Sense that Whitmanian yawp rumbling beneath your breath and tongue. It tells you that every atom that belongs to one belongs to all. Yes, yes, y'all. Though we be small, we be fierce, y'all. Contradictory. But as Whitman reminded us, we contain multitudes. And Walt Whitman was truly the first poet of American democracy, someone who I saw growing up as a kid, who I said, wait a minute, there's something being spoken of that I can relate to. There's a multitude, there's a mystery that's happening in that, and there's something in there that's beating against my head, and I gotta go and follow whatever that pulse is. And many of us have probably had that. Somebody said something to us in passing, or we saw an outrage, or someone crystallized something so clearly for us that it spoke to whatever that was in our heart that made us become the type of people that want to form a blockade against the ugliness of the wave of this world. Whitman did that in a poem called I Hear America Singing. Whitman uses the list poem form to show equality between all members of American society, and in using that conceit of singing, he reminds us that America is a chorus which requires many voices. I hear America singing, the very carols I hear, those of mechanics, each one singing his as it should be, blithe and strong. The carpenter singing his as he measures his plank or his beam. I hear the mason singing his as he makes ready for work or leaves off work. The delicious singing of the mother or of the young wife at work, or of the girl sewing and washing, each singing what belongs to him or her and to none else, singing with open mouths their strong, melodious songs. And Langston Hughes, who was another literary musician, noticing as that openly bardic and accepting as Whitman was, he seemed to leave somebody out. That's often part of what our country does, it leaves somebody out. And then we find that those who have been left will have to knock on the door, kick, scream, and scratch to be heard above the din. But we keep on fighting back. Langston, who had come up from Kansas to New York, used to close his eyes, open his ears, sitting there on that stoop there on the brownstone column, listening to the voices of immigrants, people who newly coming from the South. And he said, hey, need to find a way to capture that river, capture that blues, so that I can too add this to this growing song that is this country. So Langston said, I too, Walt Whitman, sing America. I am the darker brother. Oh yeah, they send me to eat in the kitchen when company comes. But I laugh, and I eat well, and I grow strong. Tomorrow I'll be at that table when company comes. Nobody will dare say to me, eat in the kitchen then. Besides, they'll see how beautiful I am and be ashamed. I too am America. Now neither Whitman nor Hughes were allowed to sing themselves fully. You understand? Langston was known at the time as a queer, a gentleman of peculiar appetite. And at the time, Whitman believed in what was called adhesive love, which he associated with comradeship, manly bonding, and male same-sex attraction. However, both of them ultimately had an optimistic view of America. And that for me is something I think we all need to keep. An optimistic view of what this could be and what this could become, because if not, we just get mired down in the dankness. Right? We've got to believe this can be better than what it presently is at this moment, or we cannot continue to fight. It's just the way it is. Recognize who we are as this organism. We give in so easily to despair. We give in so easily to all of those things that predate upon our minds. And so we need to continue, as one poet I know, Rick McIntyre, said, we got to always look for the light, because the darkness will find you all on its own. Right? So perhaps they sense, and I suspect they sense what we sense, which is that there is something worth fighting for, even when it deserves damning. Right? So listen to this little-known piece, very short piece by Whitman, which, of course, they don't teach us in school. But notice how prescient it is. It's called the states. And of course, this was of course, we know Whitman, he was a nurse during the Civil War. And he saw a lot going on. And so this is one of the things he wrote. I think it was just after Lincoln died. Why reclining, interrogating? Why myself and everyone else drowsing? What, deepening twilight? Scum floating across the waters? Who are they as bats and night dogs askant in the Capitol? What a filthy presidentiad. Are those really congressmen? Are those the great judges? Is that the president? Then I will sleep a while yet, because I see that these states sleep for reasons. South, north, east, west, inland and seaboard, we will surely awake. We will surely awake. 19th century, post-Civil War, country going through everything that tore it apart. Whitman still was able to find that bit of optimism. He damned it, but he also said, yo, we're going to do better. We're going to make something else happen. We're sleeping right now, but we are going to wake up. Right? And in Whitman's short poem, The President, Whitman's lambasting of the commander-in-chief. Listen to this. This is the 19th century, y'all. To the president. All you are doing and saying is to America dangled mirages. You have not learned of nature, of the politics of nature. You have not learned the great amplitude, the rectitude, the impartiality. You have not seen that only such as these are for these states, and that what is less than those things must sooner or later lift from these things. Whitman was saying that what is less than amplitude, a bigness of self, rectitude, a righteousness, and impartiality, a fair and just way of being, must leave. That the president does not understand that, but there is something of democracy in us that does. Basically, he was saying, your crap, your days are numbered. They will not last. Whitman demanded better of the president, but he also was demanding better of America. Because we can't demand better of the president unless we demand better of America. And that means demanding better of me. But of course, there are those who have come along to rant, chant, and coo us into being better. Two were Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson. These guys found their way to me when I was in a very formative age, a serious transition. I was about 15 years old, and I was becoming disenchanted with the Jehovah's Witness religion in which I was raised. I like to tell people, don't tell folks where I am. I got kicked out of being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm in the Jehovah's Witness Protection Program. You didn't see me here. Be careful what you do with that. But I think what I said is that I could not reconcile what was my intellectual becoming with what that religion was demanding me to ignore. And that whatever is this disembodied thing that we tend to sense as a God-type thing, whatever that is, that religion was too narrow to contain my amplified, growing sense of what was divine outside and within. So there was going to be a great tussling and a great wrestling. At that time, there was a music that was coming out of New York that was also being iconoclastic and was fighting back, and that my parents hated, so of course I loved it. It's called hip-hop. And so at these times, there was a merging going on between the ideas of the transcendentalists and the music that was coming out of hip-hop, out of New York, but also my own love of jazz and funk and blues and all of those other American offerings. And many of us, I would imagine, have also found a music in our lives that somehow becomes the sonic distillation of our dreams and our own angsts. So if you guys feel like coming in on this, for those of you, this is Henry, so these are my guys, Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, giving us advice from the 19th century. Henry Thoreau told civilization, yo, I gotta go, baby. I need a vacation. So He went out to Walden, whereupon he copped this revelation. Whoa! So many of us live lives of quiet desperation. Lo and behold, another transcendentalist quotation seems to capture the essence of our modern vexation. It's as if the road knew that in the future you and I would have to act in radical ways to mitigate the sad fact that because we got a slave to keep our bills paid, sometimes it seems our minds are kind of ripe to get played by the vultures in our culture, only hoping to withhold us from anything any deeper than work while we scold you, buy what we told you, pay what you owe, and we'll ensure you have debt you will never get over. Soldier. Treating human beings like we're merely skin machines where the cash is. Some sick profiteers demographic. Puppets made of plastic, molded and then mastered. Stretched fingers thread until we're bled dead into our caskets. Yes, we try to contrast it by coming off sarcastic. Hating the situation that is so drastic. Many of us huff and puff and snort all kinds of stuff to get blasted, hoping to deaden the pain that seems to be everlasting. But sometimes we find that action makes the masses go passive, keeping our minds inactive to the plans of the fascists, who hope to keep us separated into races and genders and classes, because hell, that's how you maintain the status quo status assholes. But don't let them have fake it, shake and bake and back break you down to the ground, come around, clown and undertake you. You gotta fight back. And my advice is, find whatever music and poetry and fire you got inside of you as your weapon. Do you dig? Do you dig?
I dig it.
Do you dig?
I dig it.
Existentialists, which is a fancy way of saying we should learn to live out of our very own experience and learn to trust not those preconceptions we've inherited like social, racial, cultural, and political prejudice, but instead that we should avoid demagogic fundamentalists. Let me say that one again. We should avoid demagogic fundamentalists.
Yeah.
Should avoid demagogic fundamentalists.
Yeah.
Check the way Ralph Waldo kicked that 19th century rhetoric. He said, to be yourself in a world that demands you become something else is the greatest accomplishment. Be patient with yourself. Every great artist was once an amateur, and your character is more important than your intellect. For every minute you spend being angry, you're going to lose 60 seconds of happiness. But the goal of life is not necessarily to be happy, but to be useful and have your life make some kind of difference. Now, it ain't going to be easy for any of us to do any of this.